previous video we did some conditional rendering, if you remember, while rendering the list of technologies by utilizing the booleans that we defined in the technology object that was defined in our source of data that I called as technologies. We used the ternary operator in the technology list component, and what this operator does is that it takes a condition and checks for it. If the condition evaluates to true, it does one thing, otherwise it does the other thing. So let us see more on conditional rendering in the first part of this video before we understand the other part. So now we know a lot about conditional rendering, let us discuss about outputting the lists from React perspective. As you know that we rendered our technology item components within the technology list component. So in essence what we did was we replicated the technology item component each time, passing it the required data, which is the technology object, extracting certain properties from it and rendering them in the UI. And all such technology item components were rendered within the technology list component. So as you can see, our list of technologies that we defined in app.js serves as a single source of truth, and we are feeding data to our technology list component using the app state and passing them right here. And in the technology list component, we are cycling over the list of technologies by accessing the prop that we get on the props object. So the technologies prop is an array, so we can map over that, and that is how we are able to replicate the technology item components. Passing a prop of handle click to it, which we can access right here by receiving it. And on the click of list item, we invoke this function that we got as a prop from the technology list component. And when this function handle click runs on the click of list item, it executes this function props.perform click, which is defined in the app.js component. It receives the technology name that we are passing right here by accessing the name property of the technology that we are currently on. And this is what we are logging here. So this was just an example. I won't be making a to-do list application out of this. Instead, I have planned to make applications that explain the concepts of React in a better manner. Believe me or not, to-do list is an old school way of learning now. We will side by side build applications based on the concepts as we cover them in the series. So right inside the app component, let us define a function and let's name it as getTechnologies. Let us define it as an arrow function. Now based on this client-side tech property that we have on our technology object, let us separate the list of technologies into client-side and server-side respectively. So let us go right here and let us define two empty arrays, one for client-side tech, another one for server-side tech. Now let us iterate over the entire list of technologies by saying technologies.forEach. And for each technology that you are currently on, let us check whether it is a client-side technology or not. So for that we can make use of the isClientSide tech property. So technology, and if the technology dot isClientSide tech is true, then whatever technology we are currently on, let us push that to the client-side tech array. Else if our technology is not a client-side technology, then we make it to the else case. We add the technology to the server-side tech like this. And now let us return both the arrays as an object like this. Return client-side tech, server-side tech. And now right inside the JSX, let us nest the technology list component 2 times. So let me copy this and paste it down below. So first let us pass the client-side technologies to our technology list component by passing it as the technologies prop, and to get the client-side technologies, let us invoke the getTechnologies function that we defined like this and access the client-side tech property on the returned object. And this is what we are now passing to the technology list component. So this is for client-side technologies. So let's add an h1 client-side technologies. Next, let us pass the server-side technologies to our technology list component. So h1 server-side technologies. And to get that, I will again invoke the getTechnologies function and access the server-side tech property. that we get on the returned object, and again we are passing it as a prop to our technology list component. So let us move on to the technology list file, and right here let us add a conditional check to check whether we do have any technologies to render in our list of text. If we don't have any technology to render, then we will simply return a h1 saying no technologies specified. So right after this log, if props.technologies.length is 0, let us return a h1 no technologies specified, like this. Otherwise, if we do have technologies to render, only then render them, and this is what the code that we wrote in the previous video already does. Now let us remove these two lines, and then let us head over to the browser to see what we get. So you can see now we are getting client-side technologies being rendered under this head, and server-side technologies getting rendered under this head. And our previous functionality still works the same. So you can see everything works, and even our conditional rendering works as expected. So now let us define the delete technology function right inside the app component, and then funnel it down to our technology list component so that we can invoke it on the click of any technology item that we render in the browser. So right here let us define the function handle technology deletion, and this will receive a technology name that we want to remove from our list of technologies. So let us define it as an arrow function. So tech name arrow and return some code block. Now the very first thing that we can do is to make a copy of our list of technologies using the spread operator. So const cloned technologies triple dots and technologies that we are getting from right here. Now let us find out the index at which the technology that we want to delete, which is this one, is sitting at. So for that, let us use the findIndex method in order to find the index at which the technology pertaining to this name is sitting at. Const index at which to delete cloned technologies dot findIndex, and for each technology I want the technology whose name property matches with the one that we are looking to delete, so which is tech name. Now once we have the index at which the technology object pertaining to this tech name is sitting in our list of technologies, we can remove it. So cloned technologies dot splice index at which to delete, and the delete count here is 1. So instead of directly mutating the original list of technologies, we do this in an immutable fashion by first cloning the list using the spread operator and then removing the technology that we want to delete. Lastly, let us commit this to our original list of technologies sitting in the state. So I can say set technologies cloned technologies, and let us add the second argument for this. So the setter set technologies, and now let us go down below and pass a reference to this handle technology deletion function down first to the technology list component. So delete technology, and here I can say handle technology deletion, and let us do the same thing for server side technology as well. So now we have the handler that we are passing down to technology list component, and this handler when invoked will run the handle technology deletion function to delete the technology that the user clicks on. So here you can see we are receiving it as a prop in our technology list component. Now right inside the technology list component, here you can see we are mapping over the list of technologies to the technology item components, and if you remember in the previous video we passed the handle click prop down to the technology item component, which we are receiving right here. Now as you can see that there is only one thing that we are doing in this function. We are just invoking the perform click function when a list item gets clicked. So from right here, when the on click runs, the handle click runs that we got as the prop from technology list component, and then this props.perform click gets triggered where we are passing the technology name, which runs this function right here and locks it to the console. Now right here, let us add one more invocation, and let us invoke the delete technology function that we passed as a prop to our technology list component. So props dot delete technology, And let us pass the name of the technology that we are currently on to it. And what we want here is that when someone clicks on a list item, we want to delete the technology pertaining to the list item that was clicked right from our state where we are managing them. So technology.name. Now once this handle click gets triggered from our technology item component, these two functions will run which are present in our app component. And first we will get a log, and for the technology that we get the log, right after that the technology will get deleted by using this code. So let us head over to the browser to see the code in action. If I click on Angular, now it is gone. If I click on React, it's gone. Let us open the developer tools, and inside the app component you can see we are having two technologies remaining, that where one technology is Django, which is a server-side technology, and Vue, which is a client-side technology. And if I now remove these remaining technologies, you can see it says no technology specified, and same here as well. Now let us switch back to our technology list component, and here you can see to each technology item component we are passing a key prop, and this key prop helps React to identify elements of a list. Each element of the list should have this unique key prop. Now key prop is an important property that we must specify when rendering the list of items, since it helps React to track each item individually in the list of items. This helps React in deciding what it exactly needs to adjust or patch inside the DOM. Now we know from the video of virtual DOM that React compares the virtual DOM which it will render to the one it has already rendered before rendering them to the browser. And for the lists, it needs to find out which elements changed. To React, these elements are just bunch of components, and it doesn't do deep introspection on them because that would be relatively inefficient. By default, React re-renders the whole list, and for a long list, this would be highly inefficient. Hence, we should specify the key props so that React is able to track those items which got changed and only re-render them instead of re-rendering the entire list. So to recap, we learned about what conditional rendering is in React. Then we passed our technologies piece of state into technology list components, one for client-side technologies and one for server-side technologies. Next we defined the delete technology handler to delete the technology that we defined in the app component and drilled it down to the technology list component, where once we click on any technology item, that technology gets deleted. Finally, in the key concept, I told you that it helps React track changes in elements so as to only render those elements that had changes instead of re-rendering the entire list. So this was all about the video on conditional rendering and how React tracks changes in elements of a list using virtual DOM. So in the next video, we'll learn how we can trigger side effects right within from our components using a React hook called as useEffect. So let's catch up in the next one.